Here we go. Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. My name is Brandon, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. The mission of Free State Colorado is to promote a culture of liberty, freedom of the individual, and a free market. Today, I'm joined by the Westminster Water Warriors, Sandy, Sharon, Debbie, and Desirae. These homeowners and citizens became liberty activists to fight back against a government that has doubled the cost of water and been unresponsive to the community's outcry. The Water Warriors' efforts have led to a recall election in the city of Westminster, with ballots just being sent out to voters now and an election taking place on July 20th. Well, Sandy, Sharon, Debbie, and Desirae, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you very much,
Brandon.
Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon.
Well, let's start with the basics. What is this recall about?
Who's going to start? Sandy, do you want to tell him?
No, Debbie.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So let me just give you a little history, a little timeline. Next door, we saw a post. Someone had said, "What's going on with my water bill? It's crazy." And then the next one popped up. The next one popped up. This post went off the wall on Nextdoor. And so we started investigating it. And I have a neighbor down the street who's been known to take on some tasks with the city of Westminster. And I have another neighbor who also will address council at times. And they're not here tonight, so I'm not going to share who they are with you. Sorry, just, out of privacy concerns. So we had gone to the meetings in 2018. So we knew the water rates were going up. And this meeting was absolutely crowded. The city didn't care what we said. They discounted no matter how much we told them. We know that our bills are going to double. They didn't care. I saw people outside of that meeting in 2018. It was October 2018, literally strategizing how they could get out of Westminster at that time for their water. Well, fast forward to 2020 when it finally hit us. 2019 was a wet year, so we didn't really notice the increase as much. 2020, dry year, less rain, everybody's watering, probably, your normal water schedule for the summer. And that's when we saw these big bills just rolling in. So several citizens had been calling, emailing what's going on, and we were all discounted. So we pulled together and thought, well, we'll have a peaceful protest, honking horns, signs. The city never responded. They never reached out to us. We let them know we were having a protest, and they didn't care. So we did it again. At the second one, we had actually had one of the candidates came in, candidate for mayor, Nancy McNally, and she was blown away by what she was hearing from people. And I can't remember if at that time she had announced her candidacy or not, but I remember her speaking on camera as she had been a former mayor. And she just said she couldn't believe the stories she heard. I couldn't believe the stories I heard. So that's when we still didn't hear from anyone in the city. We hear from interested parties outside the city, but not city staff, not city council. So from there, we went ahead and we filed for the petition to recall the 4 councilors. And how we choose the 4 councilors were 3 had, Anita Seitz and Herb Atkinson and Scully had actually voted on the original water rate increase. John Bowles did not, but he had an opportunity that summer to support the other 3 in not raising the water rates in last summer, 2020, when people were struggling in the pandemic. And he refused to support that counselor and sided with the other 3. So the next step was, well, the city said, well, we won't raise them in 2021. That'll help people. Well, that's not good enough. People were hurting in 2020. It wasn't 2021 yet. And then I must point out, 2021 would be the year that they would all be running for election for November, so they'd all look good. So there was that electoral strategy and process that kind of formed that vote. So this is how we decided the 4 that we were going to go with was on their voting records, how they stuck together on votes, and how they followed each other down the line when it came to that. And also their lack of communication. That was the other thing that threw them into the recall. If they didn't respond to emails, they hung up on us, didn't follow up, why would we keep them in office? And I'm not saying just not responding. Phone calls, Sandy will tell you, where they hang up on you. So we move forward with the recall, 60 days, turn them in, October 30th, turned everything in.
Can we hold on, Debbie?
Yeah.
Because we're getting kind of down the road. I think that for me, it's important that I didn't know Debbie at all. I got a crazy high water bill. It had gone up 70%. I called every single council member. My water bill was a mortgage payment. Scully said, oh, I'm losing sleep over this. It's really bothering me. Site said, there's no way you have a 70% water bill increase. I didn't vote on that. So I sent her my water bills, got letters back from the city showing that they had indeed gone up 70%, and called her back and said, okay, now you can see the math. You can see that my bill has gone up 70%. What are you gonna do about that? And she said, well, nothing. And I took it further that, either you knew that my water bill went up 70% and you're lying to your constituents because she's saying it's only gonna affect us by $4, or you can't do 5th grade math. And with a master's degree in finance, I'm pretty sure she can do 5th grade math. And so even today, she's still perpetuating this lie. Atchison, the mayor at that time, told me, and this is a quote, I don't care about you. You make up less than 10% of the city of Westminster. Have a nice day, and hung up on me. That was the epitome of rudeness for me. And Voles didn't have the decency to even return my phone call. So for me, this became real. This was a lot of money out of my family's finances. And I looked into what can I do? How can I become active? And fell onto Debbie and her team. And that's what got me started. And I think that you will see that, we have many, many, many water warriors. We are just a small piece of the group that came together, total strangers, that were all having the same experiences. Whether you lived in North Westminster, South Westminster, East or West, it did not matter. Your water bills were through the roof. So I just wanted to say that before you moved on. And I don't know if Sharon or Desirae want to pipe in on how they got involved.
Either?
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, please.
I'm a neighbor of Sandy's. And so when Sandy reached out to the mayor and other city council people, and then the mayor hung up on her, she, reached out to me because we've been friends for a long time and said, can you believe it? Sharon, what's your water bill? And I had to say, I don't know. My husband pays the bill. Let me go look at it. And then my husband's pulling up bills and he's like, yeah, it's gone up a bunch. And, it's been interesting as we've gone through the process of collecting signatures that we hear stories from people that have been so incredibly impacted by this. That it's not just a couple of people. I mean, Debbie was down in the south part of Westminster. Sandy, Desirae, and I are up in the north part, but we all connected based on the fact that so many people that we knew were having problems with high water bills, some of them unable to pay them, some of them distraught over the fact that they had to go to the food bank for the first time in their life because they either had to buy food or pay for their water bill. So that really inspired all of us when we started to meet people and talk to people, more than just what we were seeing on Nextdoor and in our own little group, that there were all these stories about people that were truly suffering, residents that had lived in our city for 40, 50 years, retirees, just a lot of different people that were hurting, and the city councilors didn't seem to want to listen or even acknowledge that there was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is incredible.
There's an absolute disconnect of the hardships. In fact, this last week when Nita said, it's just a $4 increase, I didn't think it would be that bad. But she doesn't talk about the increases on the service fees. She doesn't talk about the fact that the increase added on to the last increase, which added on to the last increase. And it wasn't just 4, it was 10%, then it was 8%. Then they were proposing the 4%. So that adds up.
Per 1,000 gallons.
Yeah.
So it's compounded every single time.
Yeah. And it's more than 8 and 10 because my third tier water bill, which I just sent Sandy tonight from 2018, was $7.55 for the third tier. I'm now paying $12.87 for the third tier, and then they're proposing $14. So how that adds up, I don't know. So they just don't do math. And in the interview last night, Anita said she believes in science. And I thought, wow, well, so do I. I also believe in math. And I believe that math doesn't lie. I believe those numbers, if you do math, it just doesn't lie. So I guess she doesn't believe in good data. She believes in bad data. And I'm not sure what science she does believe in. So
I also think it's super important to note that I didn't care when I was calling people, whether they were Republican or Democrat. I didn't know. I just knew that my water bill went from $600 to $1,200. Mm-hmm. And that's outrageous. I mean, it doesn't end.
There's 2 counselors. There's 2 types of counselors, those that listen and those that don't. Whatever party they belong to doesn't matter. And actually in the 4, Herb was a Republican. And so when they're talking party, they forget that. They also forget that the judge was a Democrat. So was the protest officer, was a Democrat. But they want to throw these party signals out. And I don't really care because that's not my ticket that I vote on. I vote on the person for the job, and they're just not doing their job right. They're doing their job for them. They're not doing their job for the people.
Well, and I think that's a great point, that this is a nonpartisan effort. It's everybody in the community who's affected. It's neighbors coming together, speaking out and not being heard by politicians. And, numbers don't lie, but politicians do. I think that's more true than ever.
Oh, I'm going to use that statement on a post.
So we should note too, Brandon, that of the people that came out and signed, about 33% were Democrat, 33% Republican, 33% unaffiliated, and 1% other. So even, I don't care how you slice this, this is about nothing but truly sad that as we sit here today, they can't see that. And they can't see, the 94-year-old man and his 92-year-old wife who have lived here for 50 years. Their water bill went up $200. And he looked at me with tears in his eyes. What should I do? And I can't help him. I said, sign the recall and we'll do our best. We'll try.
Wow.
And there's story after story after story like this. And every week when we would go out and tag houses, we would run into one more person with one more story. I met a young woman who their rent had gone up because the water had gone up, and she was afraid to flush her toilet. I kid you not. I mean, imagine meeting somebody like this. She said, we're a house of 2, and we were paying $400 for water. Just she and her mom. It's absurd.
Wow.
In an apartment.
Correct. In an apartment.
No, that's outrageous.
Yeah.
And especially during this time of hardship that people are facing with all the shutdowns of people losing their jobs and price increases across the board. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, I can't even imagine, everybody who's going through that and having to choose, do I pay my water bill or do I get food? I mean, it's crazy. And what's crazy is how this hasn't gone out there. This story hasn't gone out there quite as much as it should. Because I did watch that news report that was on last night as well. And, they were pretty soft on terms of talking about the impact. And I think it's important that people realize this is affecting people's lives. And this is a true hardship on the community placed on them by the city council, by the politicians in the city of Westminster.
Just last week, a mom said to Sharon, to her kids, this is a mom talking to her kids, and she pointed to Sharon and said, that is the lady that's going to help us so that we are able to give you kids baths again. Did I say that right, Sharon?
Yeah, so the little kids wanted baths, but they had to take showers, quick showers, because they couldn't afford the water.
You know,
said, this is the lady that's going to help, hopefully, so that if you want to take a bath, you can take a bath again.
And
Wow.
you know, when you talk about Brandon, there's this, like the bill, you literally have to have a math degree to figure out your bill. They don't give you all the information. I have not been able to get copies of my old bills for over a year. And today when I asked it, he gave me the numbers off my 2018 bill, but he could not provide me with the bill. And he said, we have upload issues. And that seems to be consistent across the board. And that you can't get information from them. How much did I use? Why did I use that much? Well, our meters aren't wrong. Our meters aren't wrong. When does my date start? When does my billing date end? Why did I get billed for 33 days in the hottest month of the summer?
Right. And you go back 2 years ago, you could go out to the city Westminster water and you could pull all your bills from the time you started in your home. And you could see a year-to-year comparison. I have my bills from 2016, 2017. I've been in my home since 2005. And I could compare one year to another. So do I have a leak? Do I have a problem? And my husband we've had people come out and assess our usage on our sprinkler systems through the city twice since we've lived here. And last year, when we got that rate increase, all of a sudden you can't upload or download any more of your bills. You can't do a comparison. And the way they're putting their utility on our bill now is you don't see year-to-year comparisons anymore at all.
Wow.
Now tell me there's something not wrong with that. When for years they showed you that, and now that they do this humongous increase to us, they stop showing you that. I'm a finance person. I like numbers. And you're right, numbers don't lie.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, it makes sense because I did see on your website that it says your mission, part of the mission of the Westminster Water Warriors is, quote, seeking transparency in how our water utilities are managed, end quote. So that makes a lot of sense. If they don't give you a guide, how do you know? How do you know if you have a leak or there's some sort of water issue in your house, some sort of problem, something that froze over the winter? You don't know. You have no idea how you're going to compare it. And that's very convenient, of course, for the city, because then it's a little bit harder for people to realize how much the increase has been.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you see it when you get your bill. I mean, the number's pretty high. You go,
yeah, but you know, you have people, you have young homeowners, you have people trying to figure this all out. And when all of a sudden they're hit with that surprise. And as Sandy said, with the elderly people, I met a lady last year named Heidi. Her water bill was $200. Her Eliquis was $170. She had property taxes and groceries to buy, and her Social Security check was $750. So she had to go borrow money. She wants to stay in her house. And part of me feels like they just want to force these people out of their houses too. Yeah. You start thinking conspiracy theories because you're not getting a full story. The dots aren't connecting. I've had teenagers. I knew how to tell when they were lying. I knew because the dots never connected. And that's how you feel here. It's like a lot of chaos of running this way and running that way. Mm-hmm. And even with the plans, I mean, they fear monger the residents constantly. We're going to be like Flint, Michigan. Oh, do you want clean water? Wow. They give out twisted surveys. One of the surveys, basically the questions were, do you support higher water rates for clean water? Or do you not want to support infrastructure and keep the rates the same? It's basically saying, do you want clean water or dirty water? Mm-hmm. And that was the two questions. It's a false dichotomy. They're forcing you down one stream so they can support their project with good results on the survey. But it didn't work because most people put dirty water.
I think think another thing to think about this is, I mean, all four of us on this call have lived in our homes for a very long time and have been Westminster residents for a very long time. We do not have, we're not stupid. I mean, we have budgets and we live by these budgets. And when the city all of a sudden just tells you that the structure, the infrastructure is bad, then it goes down to who's managing our city. I mean, really, that's, if my husband or you worked at your job and you weren't doing your job, you're going to get fired. Seriously, why do they think as politicians that should be any different for them? That they have the right to stay in their office no matter what they do. They need some accountability. And for 15 years, they said us the infrastructure was fine. And then 2 years ago, all of a sudden it wasn't. Well, what happened?
Right. And how is it that Denver's infrastructure, Fort Collins' infrastructure, is older than ours, but yet their tiers, I think at the top rate for Denver, it's in the $5 range, and the top tier for Fort Collins is less than $3. So we're all drinking from the same water pool. How do they have older infrastructure, yet they're able to keep their rates reasonable and yet still offer clean, affordable, reliable water?
And right now, Denver is going through major infrastructure on their water system, and they haven't raised rates. And one of the things they're doing is a 40-year project of replacing all pipes inside houses that are lead in the older homes. So they're also running a new pipeline from North Denver to the Denver treatment plant, but they're not raising rates. My daughter lives in Denver. I looked at her rate, $30. I think the biggest it was in last summer was $80 in the summer. Her neighbors have pools, they have hot tubs, they have, small yards, but she's got smaller yards up there. She lives in the Tennyson area, but they have all these nice little extras and the kids running through the sprinklers. $80. Boy, I would dream for an $80 bill. That's my winter bill. And there's only 3 of us in the house.
Wow. So at the very least, there's incompetence or poorly managed utilities in Westminster. At worst, it's total malfeasance and basically ripping the people off for what reason, I guess, is the question there. We'll have to see. But I think an important
in the middle there. I don't think it's total malfeasance. I definitely know it's a lot of mismanagement. The street, I'm on a street that the firemen go down all the time. It's been torn up and repaved 3 times this year. And I asked why, and they said, I said, why do you, one time it was 2 weeks after it was completely repaved, not chip sealed, repaved, repainted. Excel came in and started digging holes. So I called the city. I said, what's going on? You just paved the street. And they said, well, we have a lot of other subcontractors. It's hard to keep track of them. This is your city. So Excel put these lousy patches and then they redid the bridge. So they tore it up again. And 1 week after they redid the bridge, the city came in and tore out the sidewalk, about $20,000 worth of concrete, because they said the stormwater people did it and the street people didn't like how they did it. So they're going to rip it out.
But that's how they're using our money.
One example of where water money could come from. Those extra 3 paving jobs could have actually, if managed correctly, could have actually gone back to the water fund. And that's just my house. I'm sure this happens every other places.
I would also like to add from the City of Westminster's own website for their budget for 2020. On their site, which I can send you these pages, it shows that they profited $67 million in 2020, $61 million in 2019, and $57 million in 2018 since these rate increases went into effect. Should I say those numbers again?
Oh, please.
67 million in 2020, 61 million in 2019. And this is profits, not gross income, and 57 million in 2018. And this is right from the City of Westminster's website, their budget. It was put out October 1 of 2020. So
that wasn't even the end of the year.
Correct. You're right, Desirae. And so
that was up to October.
How many millions do they need? It's absolutely
mind blowing.
I think they think we have many trees out in our yards and that we can just go pick the money off of them. I mean, honestly, I think that because it's only the residents that are suffering. It's not the businesses. You could drive by Westminster. I rode my bike by the water treatment plant 2 days ago, and it was like 6 o'clock at night. They're watering. I'm like, I don't water until 11 o'clock at night. Really? Right. 6 o'clock in the heat of the day. Well, not heat, but pretty warm.
Back you up. There's quite a few small businesses that are suffering because they're renting space from land, they're renting their space. And one was a little music shop that's off of 72nd. She got a $500 water bill. They have one toilet, one sink, and one employee. The owner.
$500?
That was $500. And they don't have enough customers. I mean, they specialize in children's music lessons and building and making guitars. They're an amazing place. They're an artistic-based company, and they're hit that hard with a water bill. So they still are getting hit because the landlord's getting hit. So the commercial property is $771 flat rate, which is great if you're an apartment building, all of the people inside, but they don't have to watch what they have to shower. They don't have to watch what they're watering. They're paying $7 for 1,000 gallons. Never goes up, never goes lower, but it's just that strict $7. And so it doesn't make sense that there isn't some kind of cap on those buildings as well. But I don't understand how all that works. So I shouldn't throw out there should be this or that.
So moving along, when Debbie and her teammates put together this recall and we jumped on board, we went and hit every single house in all of Westminster. We tagged them. Do you have crazy high water bills? If you do, come to these places. We would get 750 signatures in a weekend. We have all walked over 240 miles of every inch of this city. We heard story after story after story. We got the signatures. And then Debbie, you can take it away from there as to what happened.
We had one of the endorsers literally took 6 weeks off work to make sure that we would make it over the top on this. And Sandy got all of these volunteers together. We couldn't have done it if we didn't all get together as this group, from Sandy's volunteers to people taking that time off from work and just dedicating all their time to it and talking to people.
We were like ants.
It was running around. But it was like really exciting. And I think, why don't politicians do this? Just put tables out and talk to people, really talking to people and hearing their stories. I didn't want to go to work. I wanted to go get more signatures. I wanted to hear more. I wanted people to know that we are trying to make a change, that we are doing everything we can to make a change to help make their lives better. But what we got was a lot of slap back in the face and called names by friends of the counselors that we were running. Sandy had a group of people that were chased down. She had one lady that got ran out of a place, as literally chased her out of there with her boards in hand.
Wow.
And it's not a lot of people. It was people that support these 4 people. And we know who they are. We know who they are. And they talk like we're the mean, we're doing this, we're being divisive. We have remained peaceful. If a business didn't want us in front of it, we would move. We were on public places. The mayor tried to kick us out of the city hall during a shredathon, and the police said, no, they get to stay there. So we'd sit on the grass. He'd try to kick us off there, and the police would say, no, they get to stay there. And so they put up every hurdle that they could possibly do to try to stop us, as if COVID wasn't enough. So when we finally got everything counted, we hear back that they threw out 99 sets of petitions because of evidence of a little fragment of paper on them. So they weren't even going to count them. How it works when you do the timeline for your petitions is you turn them in, and then you have this 15-day period of protests, of them acknowledging the signatures and giving you a certificate of insufficiency or sufficiency. So that's how the city of Westminster does it. Well, the state rules say at the end of 15 days, you get another 15 days to cure those signatures or to lodge a protest. We were given 24 hours to lodge a protest and 3 days to get witnesses and evidence together. At that point, wow, we knew we needed a lawyer. At this point, we had really been working out of our pockets, off our credit cards. The thought of getting a lawyer was just, oh my God. So we got enough money for the first lawyer who didn't understand law, and we actually wrote his arguments for him. And then we said, we need to have somebody who understands election law. We called 4 lawyers. One wanted $15,000 up front, which we definitely didn't have. The other 2 weren't available. And then we got Scott Gessler. And I'm not a political person. I had no idea who he was. I knew he was Secretary of State after we hired him. Someone said, oh, he used to be Secretary of State. I was like, awesome, he's Secretary of State. What we looked at was his record. I looked his name up in some cases he'd been and looked at his arguments, and he did a really good job. And granted, I did this in about an hour and a half on a Sunday night because I needed to have evidence turned in on Tuesday. And he said, I'll take your case. He said, I don't have time to look at the evidence. And he said, but this is what you got to do. He said, because I know how these things work. So we withdrew, we called withdraw the petition, and we didn't take part in the protest. The only people in the protest, again, were friends of the electors that we were trying, the elected candidates that we wanted to recall. Every one of their arguments were thrown out. So we pulled back all petitions. Sandy, did they give us the 99 at that time? They didn't give us the 99 at that time, did they? Yes, they did. We pulled back the 99 they threw out, all the ones that they scanned on the website. We took their letter, and then you go through and you have to validate all the signatures and see which ones you can say, hey, you made a mistake on this, or this should be accepted. And again, she turned around and denied them, and we had to pull the lawyer back in. And that's when we filed in district court. So when we get a lot of flack about why this election is taking place 3 months before, it should have happened last January. The court stated that the clerk, Michelle Parker, erred in her duties and did not apply substantial compliance. So in a nutshell, basically what that means is we took these petitions out in good faith. We did not we weren't looking to make fraudulent or anything like that. In good faith. We are not professional petition takers. Most of us are not professional office workers. So we don't understand all that administration work behind. So we follow the rules that they give us, which were limited, that we had to interpret. They make it very difficult on you. And so the judge ruled that she should have applied substantial compliance and recognized that we were not professionals at this job. We were just citizens, and we are going to make mistakes, and mistakes happen. And a cover sheet is not a reason to throw something out, and a staple is not a reason to throw something out. The law says to keep them attached while circulating. It doesn't say keep them stapled while circulating. It says keep them attached. There's many ways to attach things. So we won that case. And then it was another 2 weeks. Then we got our counts in of who we could recall. And then we got to go back and try to find more signatures there. And it was at that time that Herb decided to resign. And by now we got to flash forward. We didn't get our case until April, 4 months. So then in May, Herb resigns, and they take Anita out of the position to protect her, because we only needed 35 signatures. And you can't recall her as mayor. You can't recall her as a council member if she's now mayor. So they protected her. Catherine Scully, that ended up being really an administration error on my part.
No, I think it was my fault, Debbie.
Yeah, well, I'm working.
We had, 15 more than we needed, but they had already counted those signatures at the city, but they didn't tell us that. And so we were getting duplicate signatures unknowingly. And that's the only reason we didn't get Scully. We easily could have. I know that Sharon and Desirae and many, many others were running around at the last minute going to Hill and Dale to try and get people to re-sign their petitions, because maybe Stephen signed as Steve. And so they threw out Steve's signature. So, in fact, just this past week, Sharon ran into a man and she's like, oh, I know you. I've had you re-sign like 3 times.
Because the city did not like his signature. And I was tagging his house again and I saw him in the front yard and I said, you're Sam Albert, aren't you? Sam, aren't you? And he said, yeah. And I said, don't you remember me? I've been to your house like 3-4 times now. And he's like, oh, yeah. Older retired guy just wants to stay in his home that he's lived in for 50 years and keep his yard nice. He was out working in the front yard.
Yeah. So it is. And what we're talking about when she said she's running around for signatures, sorry, it broke in. When they're running around for signatures is how you cure them is some of them you have to go get affidavits re-signed. So that's a lot of work. So you're looking for people in a very short amount of time, hoping that they're home to re-sign an affidavit while you take a notary with you or you get them to go meet with a notary. So it's not easy. It's a lot of work.
We had cars of people like, you know, we had cars of volunteers with notaries in the car with them going from house to house. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to answer their doors these days, and understandably. Right. So it was not an easy task. And yeah, I could have gotten somebody to go to 3 more houses for Kathleen Scully had it.
So how many volunteers would you say? Oh, go ahead.
Well, the other thing that we had is we got very lucky. We're very lucky that we're all from all walks of life. Like you can tell these ladies are much more in linear in their thought than I am. I'm the creative and I'm the marketing person and they're the finance people. And then we had an engineer on board who is a pro at Excel. So he built us a tool that would do VLOOKUPs through the Excel when we would put a name in to see if they were in the voter registration database. And so it was really cool. And it would auto-populate so that we could have the sheet when we turn this stuff in. It was just amazing. It's like serendipity that we all got together with all these individual skills. I could not have done it without Sandy's financial analysis. That's not my world.
And I should say we had retired mail carriers. We had, you know, doctors, we had, you know, professors. I mean, there were people from all walks of life because the entire city was hurting. And so it wasn't just a few people. It was a lot of people who fell together through this craziness during a pandemic, which was sad.
Well, how many people would you say were involved with the recall? How many people volunteered their time and their efforts to go out and get these signatures, to do all the legwork that was required?
We easily had 30 volunteers, and there were points when we had 4 cars out with 4 people in a car hitting different neighborhoods at once. And everybody on this website has either driven or walked or tagged, and there are so many more. And sadly, there are those that we've lost because they just said, we can't afford the water in Westminster, and they moved. And of course, they still keep in touch and send me their $40 water bills.
We have a couple people that are, one lady has MS and she can't really walk, but she worked out ways that she could help us. She's either watching what's going on, listening, available to make calls. She can walk some. And when I found out she had MS, I was amazed because she did her own table by herself off of 72nd. And then we had some people that were very elderly that could drive but could not walk. So they would be drivers. We had, you know, our people on the internet that just kind of helped monitor the conversations and let us know if somebody needed help or if something was being twisted. And so with all of those, it's really hard to count how many people were out there. And
I should say those 30 were in the north. That doesn't even count the volunteers that were in the south. At one point in time, we had a bet over lunch over, is the north going to get more signatures or is the south going to get more signatures?
Yeah.
You know, and that was just kind of fun. But.
Yeah, so but everyone says why before the 3-month, and it's because the city played so many legal games with us that pushed it out.
They kept kicking the can down the road as far as they could.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing everything they could.
Yeah, one of the last things they did was apply UACOVA, which is the armed forces get to vote. And I believe that they should get to vote. But what they didn't look at was how many could do online ballots. And so I checked, out of the 310 overseas military people, 275 can do online ballots, and the others could be mailed in overnight for a small amount of money. So they still could have done the early date. But if they did the early date, you feel like it's strategized to help this counselor stay in. And that's probably the other side of the story of why the city wants these counselors in place. And it's because they agree with everything that staff presents them. And it's very coached, and you can witness it when you watch council meetings. And the other 3 ask hard questions, like, do we need to have this? Like, how much water do we have? That question has not been answered for 3 months now. Dave DeMott asked that question every time the water rates come up. How much water do we have? How many people can we sustain with this water? Cannot get an answer. Do we need to go this far with this treatment plant? Are there other alternatives? But they just go back to the same thing. And the same thing is this massive treatment plant. We talk about high density housing, and they say it's not affecting water. They say people in the 3rd tier are what affects water. Well, I can do math again. One person uses so much water a day. And if you put 300 of them in one building and you're building another building for another 1,000, just take that water usage for that one person and take it times that number, and you'll know how much more water we need. I think they have an impact on water. The other thing that they forget to say is how we first got here. And that was a build out on 136th and Zuni. Prior to approving those plans on 136th and Zuni, the city was often asked, the staff was asked, do we have enough water? And they said, yes, we have enough water. Once the build out was completed, they were doing 140% more in that sewer at the interceptor, which basically shut it down, blew it up, blocked it, and they had to do a building moratorium up north. That caused emergency funding, and that's where they say, oh, our infrastructure is old. Our infrastructure is old when you don't plan for that many houses to go in one spot and that much high density housing. And yet we continue to look at plans that are adding more of that. And we keep saying, where's the water? Oh, it's the water you don't want us to have. The water you want to price us out at. And price us out and take away our lawns and build your beautiful high density areas with no grass, no trees, lots of asphalt. So.
Wow. Yeah, definitely some poor planning there.
Yeah.
And then they're footing everybody with the bill for it.
Mm-hmm. And we're not against housing. We just are against straining the city so much, because with that comes a whole host of other problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the
so how many signatures? Oh, go ahead.
I think the other thing we maybe haven't touched on is what we have seen over the last couple of weeks out driving around the city is you see a lot of people are doing xeriscaping, which sounds great. But when you take out all of your grass and you can't afford to water trees, you create, and you put in all rock, you create a situation where parts of our city will draw in more and more heat. And there's a lot of talk about heat sink now, and big cities drawing in a lot of heat. And if we can't afford to maintain trees in our city and some lawns, doesn't have to be huge, but some lawns, you're going to have a situation where Westminster is going to be the hottest city along the Front Range or the hottest city in Metro Denver. And so to just say we're going to price you out of the water doesn't help. If you go and look at some parts of South Westminster where we should really see a revitalization because prices have gone up for homes, you see 30-40% of the lawns are completely dead. They have no trees. Why? Because they're new homeowners. They're just getting into their first place. They can't afford a $250 water bill. We met a guy last summer. He had just put $3,000 worth of sod into his yard, and he realized he could not afford to water that sod.
Wow.
So, you know, it creates a circle, of a very vicious circle that is not healthy for the environment either. It's certainly not healthy for people that have families or older folks that want to stay and age in place. It's very unhospitable.
It is. And there's that misnomer about the artificial turf. Artificial turf actually raises your heat, I think 5 to 10 degrees. It can actually burn feet. It's one of the worst things for the environment, but it's my understanding that the sales for that have increased. I think Sandy told me that
artificial turf can get up to 150 degrees because it has a black backing. It can literally burn the feet of your pets and your children. It does raise the temperature of the surrounding area by 15%. What else did I want to say? It's, you know, once it goes into a landfill, it's not biodegradable. It's just endless. And interestingly, the city of Westminster doesn't allow for fake grass in the front yards in the city of Westminster, which I find interesting. In fact, as I said here, we have a test case in our neighborhood of whether or not they're going to allow that moving forward. But because of the fact that it heats up the earth, which is what we're trying to avoid right now, they're not allowing it at this time. Is that
so
right?
The other thing that they're doing is they're sending letters, and some of my neighbors feel like they're being threatened that because they hit the 3rd tier that they're going to come take their yard out. And they're saying, we'll come take your yard out for you. We'll take your sod out. Kind of a big brother feeling thing. You're a bad, you know, it gives you that feeling that they're being very judgmental on who you are and how you live. And we're going to take your grass away from you. And these letters have been very, very disturbing that they're getting. I didn't get one, which I'm surprised. I don't get a lot of things from the water department, and all of my emails are forwarded to the finance manager of the water department. So I speak with him. I can't talk to utility person. I find that interesting.
Well, that's crazy. Yeah. What kind of community is the city creating for Westminster? You know, taking out all the green space, you know, basically penalizing people who have trees, who have yards, turning it into a desert. I mean, it's sad to see. It's sad to hear.
Yeah. And it's interesting at City Hall. If you look at City Hall, their grass is as green could be. But if you look at the police station, they can't afford to water their grass, so it's all dead. And you're sitting there and you can see one side of the street and the other side of the street, and it's almost comical.
But even walking down in Westminster last summer, you would have residents that really cared about their yards, and they were, you know, gardeners, and their yards were meticulous and green and beautiful, and their next door neighbors all black, all just dirt, weeds, because they couldn't afford it or they didn't care. I mean, some people don't care, but I mean, you have one extreme to the other, and you don't have a lot of middle ground. And I think all we're asking for is middle ground. We have a right as a US citizen to have our home and landscape it the way we desire. And the city should not have a right to raise our water rates without it going to a vote, to the citizens for a vote. And that's not what they did. They decided as council members that they had the right to raise our rates.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? You need some community input. You need to talk to the voters, talk to the people in the community. And yeah, I mean, you know, people need to realize here, you've tried, people in the community tried to reach out to the city council, tried to reach out to the government, and they didn't listen. They didn't listen. They don't want to listen. And so you have to make them listen, and you make them listen through the recall election. Get them going. Once you start threatening their jobs, once you start giving them, an ultimatum here, hey, you're going to be out of office unless you actually do your job by representing the people and trying to make a better community for us, not make it worse, not price people out of their homes and destroy all the green space in our community. I'm really happy to see the recall effort succeed and hear all the challenges that you had to overcome. I'm very happy that you're able to overcome them. How many signatures overall did you have to get?
It was 5,000. Was it like 5,100 for Herb Atkinson and 6,098 for Anita Seitz, John Voles, and Catherine Scully. And that is based on 25% of the total voters spread across all the councilors, where Anita was saying that a minimal amount of voters signed for her. But Anita she got 11,000 votes at the last race. And we had 66,000 people that signed for her. So I had to do math for her again and let her know that it wasn't just a small percentage, that it was 55% of the people that voted for her had signed the recall petition, because she believes in science, but she just doesn't believe in math. So when she put those out, and with John Voles, I felt like we really only needed one signature for John Voles, because if we did 25% of his voter base, 4 people appointed him into office. So we really truly only needed one signature for him. And I wish that the actual 25% was who voted for the people, the actual people that went into office. So it seems like didn't seem like a lot, then it seemed like a lot. I think if we didn't have the pandemic, we probably would have doubled those numbers. We would have had such a big cushion. We had one gentleman that signed with a power of attorney, and we did kind of recognize a lot of the signatures that they tried to throw out were elderly people, because the handwriting was shaky, power of attorney, somebody else filled in their address that looked like somebody's writing. And that was really, really concerning, because these were the people that truly risked their life in COVID to come out. An 80-year-old man coming out to sign the petition in the middle of COVID. I mean, it breaks your heart.
Wow. So it started off with a recall effort against the 3 council members. And then obviously, Herb Atkinson resigned. Scully didn't work out. And then there was the mayoral with Seitz being placed as the mayor. So missing out on the recall there. So that just leaves the one. So this current recall election, the ballots are out. People in Westminster, voters, should be getting those in the mail. And there's one name on there, right? Joe Voles. Yeah. Or John Voles, excuse me.
John Voles recall. Catherine Scully is the candidate, or Catherine, sorry. Oh, that's killing me. Kathleen Dodaro is the candidate. So
who is Kathleen Dodaro?
She is a professor at Regis. She's been president of the HOA. She's got quite an impressive resume of the management type things that she's done. She's owned a company. She's been a CEO at another major company. And now she teaches HR law at Regis.
And she also has an accounting, a bachelor's in accounting.
A bachelor in accounting too. So yeah. She's very well-rounded. She's soft-spoken. I think that when you have candidates with, she's very likable, but she's not that charismatic, hey, look at me kind of person. She's smart and she's thoughtful and she listens and she responds. And that's what you need as a candidate. But a lot of times they get run over by that more charismatic salesman type, buy my message person. And so I think that she's an excellent candidate. They're really attacking her viciously, making things up that they would have no idea that she's done or not. And
my most favorite is that she's an anti-vaxxer, which is 100%
not true. Yeah. Where did they find her medical records to report that? I mean, so it's and they want to call us as this was just a power play. And I think that's another important fact to look at. The group that's in there now, John Bowles was appointed. And in 2018, there were 3 candidates that left, that knew they were leaving at the same time. One took a job to be the communications officer for Jared Polis. The other, Emma Pinner, went to Adams County as a commissioner. And then Shannon Bird went to higher office. So both Shannon Bird and Emma knew on election day when they won that they would be leaving, but they stalled their announcements. Maria DeCambria also had made her announcement, I believe, just before the election. So they went ahead and they staggered their announcements of departure, even though we knew they were leaving, so that there wouldn't be a special election and that they'd always have 4 like-minded people sitting there to vote in their next choice for office. And that's
those that were leaving, you have to remember that those that were leaving voted yes to raise our water rates.
And then ran.
And then they ran. And now one of them is representing us at the state.
And one of them is representing us in Adams County.
Exactly. Scary, huh?
Wow. Yeah, that's a story I'm definitely going to follow up on. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow. The appointment thing is concerning because that's now how Anita got to be mayor. She got appointed, and the sliding people into it's very, when you run as a candidate as an incumbent, and I know 2 of the people that slid into the seats, they didn't get reelected, but they all ran, and they even had on their websites elected into office, so that it would fool the voter. You think you're voting for an incumbent, and a lot of people just do that, vote for an incumbent, because they think, oh, everything's going okay, I'll vote for the incumbent. And they didn't work for them, but I'm just, they think that puts them in a better visual, better marketing.
For sure, yeah. Very interesting. There's definitely a bigger story here involved. This little political club, this clique here that's protecting themselves, getting their friends and allies into office and kind of gaming the system in a way, if you will, to, preserve their little power group. So that's very interesting. And it's definitely, we've seen some of those candidates moving to higher office and moving to different positions throughout the state, tells me that there's this connection there where they're working together, planning things out in order to further their political careers. And political careers may be more important to them than the residents and homeowners of Westminster at this point.
Mm-hmm. I think at this point, Brandon, they're trying to call us extremists, which is unfortunate because it's really about every mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle. It's about every citizen in this community that is truly being hurt by these higher water rates that are needless. And the question is, where is the money going? We can see that they profited. I've watched every single grueling water study hour. There were 5 of them. And it really is, where is the money going during, and I don't know the year. I've been trying to find that out today, but it was during Atchison's term. The tap fee for a builder/developer went from $6 per tap to $3 per tap. Percent.
I think it was 3% of some number that we had, and 6%, which means from 2013 to 2018, he was giving discounts to tap fees.
So it's a 50% cut, and that's huge. And yet we're putting in this high density housing on every corner, which the residents don't want. I mean, I think that's very clear as we've been walking the neighborhoods. They don't want it. They want places for their kids to play. One of the most beautiful pieces of property is the farm, which is at 82nd and Federal. I mean, beautiful views. And they're wanting to put 70-some hundred homes in there and only allowing 1 parking space per unit. So where are these people going to park their cars? Oh, that's right. We're supposed to walk or ride our bikes. But that's not reasonable. People aren't. We don't have to. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's important to understand that when a builder comes in, the city has to prove that they have enough water for the people that they're building for the builder to get financing. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And so the city has to show where it's going to come from. And the best way to do that is to strangle everybody else so they can keep putting in more houses. So, okay, go back. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sharon, you've been pretty quiet over there. Do you want to add anything?
I think if we were just to wrap it all up in a tight bow, what we've seen is the residents across the entire spectrum of our community are all speaking out. That can be the young people that are just starting out and buying starter homes and trying to get their feet on the ground and, you know, do some upkeep to older homes. We've seen that older people are definitely affected by this, people that have lived in our city for 40 and 50 years, and they're, you know, on a retirement income, and they can't afford these kind of increases without making some really painful decisions. We talk a lot about, you know, in this time, you know, aging in place and how it's so much more affordable for people to do that. But if we make it unaffordable, then we change the whole demographics of our city. And that's not necessarily beneficial. It's beneficial when you have different groups of people in your city and it's dynamic and it's diverse. And all of these people, you know, whether they're starting out or they're middle-aged or they're in an extended family. A lot of families did this during the pandemic. Children came home, you know, adult children moved out of their apartments, came home, and you've got, you know, 5, 6 people living in a home again, and everybody showers and everybody needs laundry, and they're having ridiculous water bills. It just impacts the community in so many different ways on so many different levels, that we really see that people are willing to come out and help us as volunteers, and we're all unpaid and we're all nonpartisan. We don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent. We're just saying, you know what, what's happening at our city level isn't right for anybody. And the response has really been tremendous. I mean, we've had people, even this last week that I've talked to, that are like, I'll volunteer, I'll go talk to the people on my block. Like, great, if you know the people on your street, we can't hit every house. If you can talk to 5 or 6 people on your street and tell them how important it is to get out and vote and put a stop to this and let the city know, the people that are still on council know that we're serious about this. You cannot damage the city to this level and think that you're just going to get to walk along to the next level of government or walk away to a nice county position, and that people aren't going to notice, because people have noticed and they're standing up and they're saying no more. And I think that's what the Westminster Water Warriors is about, is saying, we're not going to let our city councilors and our city leaders do this to us. It's not good for our city. It's not good for our community. It's not good for our environment. And we're just going to put a stop to it. And everybody that we talk to, you know, it's amazing, at the grocery store, anywhere you go and you bring it up, at the gym, they're like, yeah, it's not good. It's not right for our community.
Sharon,
so councilors need to listen to us.
Sharon,
can I just say something? Sharon is elected as our spokesperson from here on out. Oh my God, that is not me right here. I am not a spokesperson. She is it.
Share the story of the woman that you ran into last week.
So I ran into this woman. It was one of the 100-degree days, and I was out tagging homes, and I had run out of water. So I had my water bottle with me, and I met her in her front yard. It was late in the afternoon, and she was just putting a little water on her flowers. She had a beautiful front yard, and we talked for quite a while. She built her home with her husband in 1980 here in Westminster. He passed away in 2006. And she lives by herself in her home, her original home. She was, as we talked, she talked about her garden. I said, oh, it's so beautiful. And she said, yes, the water is really expensive, but I really like my garden. This is my hobby. This is what I do. She had volunteered for a number of years in volunteer positions within the city after she had retired. She couldn't do that anymore because of COVID, and because of her age. So she was at home, and she said, do you need some water? And I said, I would love some water. So she said, come on into my kitchen. I went into her kitchen. She got ice out of her freezer. She's washing her hands before she gets the ice and gets my water bottle put back together. She's got a bucket in her sink. As she's washing her hands, she's saving all of the water. And she's telling me, when this bucket fills up, I take it out to my yard and put it on my yard. She says, I do the same thing when I shower. When the water's warming up, I put the bucket in the shower. Why? Because she wants to keep her nice garden and she wants to stay in Westminster. And this is somebody that's probably in their 80s, dragging gallons of water out to the yard, 5-gallon bucket out to the yard to water her garden. And when I saw that, I said, you know what? This is not right. This is just not right for our community. This is not right that people can't stay in their homes, that young families can't let their kids have baths when they want to have a little bath. It's just not right. You can't maintain a little piece of grass and some nice trees in your yard and not spend hundreds of dollars.
And I think people in South Westminster have larger lots,
yes.
Larger lots and older homes. So they get
done use them to garden and feed their families. And you're taking that from them.
Wow.
My area where I live at the historic, where I live in the founder of Westminster's house. So there's like about 10 houses that are on big lots, but they're bigger. But as you go down, you've got the 1940s World War II homes, and they're on lots that are about a third of an acre. And it was an agricultural community. So it's kind of set up to be an agricultural community. 60% low income, free lunch program environment down here. So you have people that are trying to stay in their houses, large families, multi-generational families. Right. One lady that wrote in on Facebook said she has taken care of her parents, just moved in, and she's got 3 teenage kids, and she was going into tier 2 in the winter to manage everybody in the house. And she said she was yelling at people about conserving water, but she's still up there. And why that's important is those first 3 months of internal usage average out what your sewer is going to be. She was expecting by summer that her monthly sewer bill was going to exceed $60 on top of the external usage or internal usage and water bill later on. So where I have just 2 people in the house, so mine is about $14, hers was going to be $60. And she's trying to take care of everyone in a small house, like no more than 1,800 square feet with a basement. So you're talking maybe 1,000 up, maybe 1,000 down. So pretty small houses, crowded with people. I have another family that has 6 kids that lives down the street. They're Spanish. They're a migrant family. They don't speak English. Has 2 huge gardens in his front yard. I can't imagine what his bill's like. And nobody's communicating to him except with propaganda.
Wow.
So that it's not open to the whole community. And then when I go back to seniors, how the city primarily communicates is online, on Facebook, or on email. My mother-in-law and her friends would not have any information unless I gave it to them because I printed off for them. So they get the propaganda flyer in their water bill that tells them if they don't pay high water rates, they're going to have dirty water and we're going to be Flint, Michigan. Well, we'll be Flint, Michigan if we keep building all the houses we're building, but we won't be Flint, Michigan about water. That was a whole different issue. Not even close to what we're looking at.
Oh my gosh. It's almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable. You know, I knew a little bit about this going into this interview, but I mean, this has just been completely mind-blowing to me. It's just been shocking. I can't describe it in any other word except just shocking. You know, I think about so many people I know, retirees, people on fixed incomes, and I can't even imagine, you know, being in this situation. And it's frustrating. It's infuriating, really. So I definitely wish you all the best on the recall effort. When are the ballots due? When do the ballots need to be turned in?
July 20th.
So July 20th. Now, is it so people can mail them back, or is there a drop box?
There's both. I will drive mine and drop it to make sure it gets in there.
Yeah. Where is the drop box at for the ballots for the recall election?
I know where the Adams County one is at City Hall. I'm not sure where the Jefferson County one is.
And we need to repeat that they have to check the box to recall John Voles and check the box to elect Kathleen. That's important. If both boxes are not checked, they will throw the ballot out.
Okay, so voters in Westminster are getting a ballot in the mail, and there's 2 questions they're asked, right? They have to check both boxes, one to recall John Voles and one to elect Kathleen Dodaro. And if they do that, then they seal it, turn it in, drop it off, and they haven't until July 20th to do that. I think that's important to...
I want to make one more note on that ballot. They allowed John Voles to make a statement. So there's a 250-word statement, very politicized, about how we're bad, he's right, and why he needs to stay in office. Kathleen Dodaro was not allowed to make any statement. Only John was. So,
wow.
So the ballot... No.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That just shows you how we've been fighting, what we're fighting up against right there. They let one person that's currently on the council have words, but the person that we're trying to get elected not to have any. That's a pretty strong
message.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a huge message.
Wow. Well, I congratulate you on everything you've done. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for fighting for yourselves, for your families, for your communities. And you're in the home stretch. I wish you all the best. I hope it works out. I hope that you're successful in your efforts. Where can people find more information on the recall effort?
WestminsterWaterWarriors.org and Westminster or Water Westminster on Facebook. And then we have a Facebook group. So I will email you this so you can post it with it. I'll even email you a copy of the ballot in our last newsletter.
Definitely, okay. Yes. I will post the links in the description of the video, on the post on the website at freestatecolorado.com, the Facebook page, and link everything as well so people can get this information and spread this to as many people as you know in Westminster. This is extremely important and a big opportunity to fight for the community.
And Brendan, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you for giving us the time, because we have met with reporters, we've met with news stations. They give you a soundbite of 30 seconds and they don't. And then they go to the city and, we're not professionals at this. And they have a marketing team behind them writing their speeches for them of manipulative messaging. And we're just speaking from our heart. And so I do appreciate that. We haven't had one person that's had an in-depth what's really going on with this. And so I can't thank you enough.
Ditto.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Definitely we'll be in touch. I want to do everything I can to keep people informed about the effort. And July 20th is the most important date here. And all the links will be there. So any final words from anybody before we sign off?
Recall John Voles.
Ditto.
Yeah.
It's gonna elect Kathleen.
And Brandon, we could talk another hour just on city staff management salaries and overages. So if you want Water Warriors Part 2 on how our city's managed, Sandy, and there's a gentleman named Scott Ireland, he's got all that information.
Well, perfect. Yeah, I definitely would like to revisit this. I think it's very important, and I think there's a big opportunity for people in the community to get involved and have an influence. Okay. The last thing I want to say is, there's the recall election, July 20th, the date, but then there is the November election. So I just want people to be aware of that as well, that they're aware that, the efforts can continue. So everybody who wasn't on the recall election, is this true? They'll have an opportunity to be replaced come November?
Yes, that is. So Catherine Scully's up for re-election. Anita Seitz is up for re-election. And so even though we didn't get them here, there's that opportunity to get them in November. So I say, remember November. Remember everything that's happening now in November.
I'm sure we'll have to talk, after, obviously with the recall election, but going into November as well, and talk about the efforts there. I'd love to hear about that. So with that, I want to thank you very much. Wish you well. and best wishes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.